Hey, hello, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of getting students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I work at IE Business School Publishing, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Engagers, and today we have Samantha. So Samantha, first thing, before we get started, are you prepared to engage?
I am, definitely.
So let's do this. Samantha Clarke is a game designer, developer, and researcher of game-based learning and gamification applications at the, and this is a long name, Disruptive Media Learning Lab at Coventry University in the UK. She works with both internal and external learners, practitioners, and stakeholders to develop all manner of quirky, gamey things. She sometimes even writes about the quirky, gamey things, and her research and practice interests are mainly in the area of curiosity, narrative, and puzzle-led games that include escape rooms, Dungeons and Dragons, mystery boxes, and choose-your-own-adventure-style games. She's a bit obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons and likes nothing more to kick back in the afternoon and kill some deserving cultists. And kill some deserving cultists. So, Samantha, is there anything that we're missing from that amazing intro?
That sounds about right. So you've got the cultists on there, and that about sums it up for me.
It's always important. So Samantha, getting a bit more into what you regularly do, can you let us know how does it look like when you have a regular day in Samantha's life?
Okay, so every day at 6 o'clock, I have a very young family, so I have two very small children. So it's a military operation to kind of get everyone out of the house to start with before we do anything else. And then when I get to work, coffee. Coffee is really important, obviously, which I think was probably top of most people's lists. But then I'm quite lucky because my job is a bit strange. I get to do research. I also teach, and a lot of the time I'm also developing things. So I'll say tomorrow I will be mostly developing. So when I get to work, I will be jumping straight into RPG Maker and probably spending my entire day just tapping away, trying to get something out. And then in the evening, once we go back and it's a military operation to get everyone back into bed, then it's a case of me time. So usually either playing board game, or I just purchased 2 Point Hospital, which is the runoff of Theme Hospital, which is amazing. Everyone should play it. So yeah, that's pretty much me at the moment.
That sounds fantastic. Very, very exciting kind of day with Samantha. So maybe somebody would like to go around with you for a day and see how it looks like.
Well,
Samantha, can you tell us a story of what we like to call your favorite failure when creating one of these games or these gameful experiences? And probably something that I'm sure actually set you up for either future success or a massive opportunity for learning.
So first of all, how many have I had of these successful failures? Well, I think the one that really kind of sticks in my mind is when I did my first serious game, and I just finished my degree, thought I knew everything. Obviously I didn't, and still don't. But it was a really different experience going from creating sort of entertainment games into serious games, and it was definitely a shock to the system, because all of a sudden I was working with all of these multidisciplinary people who, this was a game called Prepare that we were working on, and it was to help children recognize sexual coercion. So we were working with educators and obviously developers, and then people with expertise in that area, and everyone wanted different things, and everyone wanted these things to go into the game, and it was overwhelming, if I'm honest, because what I thought was going to be relatively easy turned out to be so frustrating. And I look at that game and just cringe now internally, because I just think it could have been really great. But it was a learning curve, and there was also issues like we had an international development team, so I could only speak to them at certain times in the day, and the testing. There was a whole load of things that we learned from it. But I would also say that was, even though I look at that game and think, well, that for me was a failure because I don't think it was as good as it could be. I learned so much. It was such a good learning experience to know that actually there's so much more that goes into creating game-based learning or gamification, because it's not as simple as just thinking, we'll just chuck a few things together. So yeah, it was a massive learning curve for me.
And what would you say was one of the big challenges that you faced? Something that you say, well, this was one of the core things that was a big challenge and that I didn't realize, or I realized later. What could be like that maybe one or two things that you would say, well, these were the main things that I took out from that experience?
From that experience, so definitely multidisciplinary working. And I think so in that, particularly for me, there were lots of people who had a very, very determined idea about what the game should be and the direction that it was taking. And because I was quite young and, not as confident now as I am, I also allowed people to kind of guide the gamey side, whereas I should have said, no, let's look at this from a game perspective. Let me do my part of that. But let's see how we can work in your expertise. And yes, I will take what you say into account. But there was definitely more of I think that working together approach was a big thing at the time, because I just, when you're making a normal entertainment game, you can work with developers and, programmers and designers and artists and things like that. And that is difficult. But then when you take into serious games or gamification, that just gets so much bigger, and there is so many more things to consider that that was definitely something that I learned in that aspect. Standing ground, knowing, not but also allowing others to have their input, but knowing the game side as well, I think, is that it's important. So yeah.
What's your background, Samantha? What were you majored in at that point, or what were your previous studies?
So I came from a computer games design background initially, and had kind of worked as a designer and concept artist for a small Welsh company. And was, even though I was doing that, I always knew that I wanted to do game-based learning. That was kind of everything that I was moving towards. It's just when I was there in that space, I'd never really had much chance to do that with proper companies or people actually doing real games out in the real world. Whereas mine was just sort of university student based, making these things. So yeah, and then sort of I came to the Serious Games Institute into Coventry University, and that was trial by fire. So yeah, it was good.
Fantastic. So that's, I would say one thing that is implicit in your story and that I would like to highlight as a learning is that one of the few ways in which you can actually learn and get better at this is not only reading, understanding, and having all that background that Samantha had as well. And I'm sure she had a fantastic background, but also trial by fire. You have to actually go and do the thing to be the thing, if you know what I mean. That idea of just reading and thinking through things is fantastic, phenomenal, and is a very good step, but it's definitely not the final step. I mean, if you want to be great, if you want to be fantastic, if you want to get better at things, you have to do them. You have to practice. So I guess that's something that we can't forget in our journey. You have to prepare, and then you have to act, which is always important.
Definitely.
So Samantha, if we take a spin from that previous story and actually go into a story that we would actually go more into the success area of that story, and it's the story of maybe a challenge that you faced, and a big challenge that you faced, and you actually solved using game-based learning, gamification, all these gameful approaches that we've been talking about.
Okay. So this, I was thinking that this really is this, because there's so many challenges, but I guess one of the biggest that I've had was, and I think others, when I speak to other people, they have it too, is that convincing others that, game-based learning or gamification is an actual thing, that it works, and it's not just a gimmick or something which is trivial. It has much deeper meaning. And so working in a university, one of the biggest challenges I have is convincing other lecturers that, if, in order to sort of shake up the teaching and learning practice, maybe to give this, this practice a go. And it's always often met with this kind of, oh, well, I'm not really sure about this, or, oh, will it take time? And I'm not really sure how to implement that. And I think a large part of that as well is that people assume that it just has to be all digital, and they're going to have to, rely on a lot of other people to kind of get involved and help them. But so I've been messing around with sort of multimedia approaches to game-based learning for a while now. And a couple of years ago, came up with the idea of Escaped, which is essentially educational escape rooms, which are kind of, escape rooms are getting bigger and bigger. And, there was just something really nice about the idea of trying to get that into a university setting. So we came up with a framework and some videos, and then we made a couple to give to the lecturers to try. And I have to say, there was nothing more satisfying than watching this group of, lecturers run around to escape rooms, kind of trying to solve all of the puzzles and have this. They had a really good experience. But for me, one of the greatest things was when they came out, and they were so excited. They were just, over the moon. And instead of me going, well, and you can use it like this, or you can add it here, they were turning to me and saying, oh, I can imagine us putting this learning objective here, and we can get the students to, solve these equations via this, because they were engineering lecturers, the first group that we tried it with. But they were just so excited. And I think that, for me, made me really excited about the fact that, this is what games should do, is basically create this emotion in people. And for the first time ever, I saw that in this group of people, and it was great. So yeah, that was it.
Sounds fantastic. Escape rooms in education. This is something that we've talked a bit about before, but it's something that we're certainly trying to get some more into in myself, and something, and I revealed a few episodes ago that I'm going to go give it a go at some point in this coming fall.
It's amazing. You'll have an amazing time. Just go and experience.
Definitely. Samantha, thank you for that story. Thank you. I believe that you have, I shared recently in my Twitter, because I ran into your article of 2016 about Escaped. Is there somewhere where you have a compilation of that information, of the framework, or something that can be shared to the audience?
Yes, certainly. So there's actually a few. There's a journal paper about it as well. So that's available, and it's open from the International Journal of Serious Games. So you don't have to pay to access that, and it's got all of the information in there. We also have a series of short videos about how to create your own escape room, educational escape room, on our Game Changers YouTube site.
Fantastic. So engagers, if you want to know more, now you have the reference. Anyway, we will put that as well in the show notes, so we will have the links up there. Samantha, finally, is there, I'm knowing and listening to all the different things that you do, I'm guessing that there might be different approaches, but would you say is that there is a process when you find a challenge that you want to achieve through gamification, games, serious games, escape box, mystery boxes, escape rooms, etc.? Is there some sort of a process that you follow when you want to implement these ideas especially into education, which is our forte as well?
Yeah, so actually, the story I told about the the failure, which the prepare game actually led to a process because of the fact that it was hell on earth, in a sense. So actually, myself and a colleague, Professor Sylvester Arnab, we created a process that we use now for creating. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it is gamification or a serious game or whatever, because it always starts off with what I think anyway are the most important aspects to look at, which is we always do a needs assessment first. So looking at what the issue is, who are going to be the end users? Are there going to be several different types of end users? Where is it going to sit? And then that kind of all leads out into what technology then is going to be used to kind of back that up, or, you know. So we always do a needs assessment. It's really, really important part of the process. And then once we know what the issues are, we look at the sort of the learning or behavior change objectives, and then we map them out to fit in with game objectives or game aesthetics. So, you know, if we want someone to learn in a role play setting, then it makes sense to map that out into a role play type of game. So we kind of use that to define a little bit about what we're trying to do. And then I always think lots of participatory design and iterative design is really, really needed in these sorts of things. So work as closely as you can with the end users and just keep refining. I think that's
one of the keys I'm hearing from you is the part of iterative design, that you check something as well with your users, you test it out, once again, trial by fire, and come back and do something else, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, games are such a personal thing, and I mean, you're never going to please everyone, but if you can have that direct conversation with your users throughout the process, then you cut a lot of that down, because, you know, what I think is a good game might not be what my students think are a good game, and it's just trying to, you know, refine that process as much as possible and save yourself a headache later on.
Definitely. I think I'm a big proponent of this iterative design, especially when it involves the actual people who, or the actual profiles of people who are going to be the final users of your learning experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Engagers, quick break from this interview. If you love what gamification can achieve, then you will love going to a gamification conference. And this year, we got a 10% discount for the Engagers to assist to Gamification Europe 2018 in Amsterdam. All you have to do is get your tickets for the conference at professorgame.com/gamification Europe. That's our affiliate link. It was an incredible experience in 2017, full of chances to learn and interact with the top experts. If you think you want to make it, get your tickets sooner rather than later. Their prices are only going up and tickets might run out. So click pause and go to professorgame.com/gamification Europe to get your tickets discounted today and also support Professor Game. Samantha, we're going to move now into what we call the second part of this interview. And in this part, we're going not so much for the story and the long-winded answers, but rather for something a bit more direct. You know, these tools, tips, tactics, maybe a reference to somewhere else or a reference to another person we should listen to, books, etc. And the first question that we would like to know is if there's any sort of best practice or any idea or anything you could do that you believe any gamification project for learning could benefit from.
Yeah, I think for me, it's getting player choice into whatever it is that you're doing. So I hate linear things, because, you know, people are all different. So for me, the more player choice that you can add to your project, the better, because it means that people are actually given that freedom, and, you know, they take control then. And that sense of ownership and emotional attachment to whatever it is that you've designed. I think it's really important.
I don't know if you've heard or read the discussion, I think it was Andrzej Marchewski had about, you know, giving exactly that choice to the player in gamification. And there's like several levels as well of choice. I mean, sometimes it's apparent choice in a way because you're giving them choices, but there are not too many choices. And there's other ways where it's even smaller, the sense of choice, because they're really in the end leading to the same place. But once you, as Samantha was saying, you feel that sense of choice, you're provided with more ownership, and it's more kind of your path to whatever it is you're going, and you feel it's yours, and of course you feel more engaged with it. So I couldn't agree more with that statement, Samantha. What would you say, Samantha, is your favorite game?
Oh, that's easy. Dungeons and Dragons. You've got role play, you've got the player choice, you've got humorous situations and tension, and all of that. So, it has it all for me.
You of course, I'm guessing that you recommend Dungeons and Dragons always in a person-to-person setting, or is there a way like to play it with people over the distance, or what would you be your? I'm personally interested in this, so that's why I'm doing this follow-up.
Okay, no, so actually we play every week, but I've got someone who Skypes in because they've just had a baby, so they can't actually make it here in person, but we can Skype them in. It's fine. I just have to roll all those dice. And then I believe there's a load of online resources as well. I think is Roll20. Now, I've never used it, but I know several people who use this to play D&D online with lots of different people. So there are ways to do it. Definitely, you don't need to be in the actual room space with them. You just need to have the will to do it. So, but yeah.
And a nice group, I'm sure, which is very important.
Yeah, ours has been going for 4 years now, so it's a real commitment.
Fantastic. And Samantha, is there anybody that you would like to listen to interviewed in Professor Game, aside, of course, from Sylvester, who was like, I think, our third or fourth guest?
Yep. So actually, I'd really like to hear from Brenda Romero. She's a big bod in the general entertainment games industry, but she's also an academic, and she does a lot for women in games, but she also has developed a series of games that she calls her games for understanding, and they're so emotionally moving and powerful that I think she's got a lot of really interesting things to say.
Brenda Romero, let's look forward into having her on the show. And in that same vein, is there any book that you would recommend to the engagers? Yeah,
certainly. So it's really old, but I love it. It's called Mind at Play, The Psychology of Video Games, and that's by Jeffrey and Elizabeth Loftus. And it's really great because it goes through all of these different areas of game psychology, but in a really easy to read and understand way. It's it's academic without being overly academic. And wordy, and I think there's something nice that they've both written it together, because you kind of get that sense of them coming through, which is it's nice. I definitely recommend it.
Definitely. I haven't read it. It's now going to be on my list for sure. Samantha, is there something that you would call your superpower when creating these gameful experiences in education? I
guess my biggest thing is I don't really mind what I'm developing in. I guess I'm comfortable quite moving between, analog or digital. So maybe I'm super not fussed woman. I don't know. I don't mind as long as what we're creating is interesting. I don't mind. It kind of fits in whatever.
Beautiful. And Samantha, as we are going to meet once again, because we were talking in the pre-interview chat that we had some casual encounter a couple of years ago in a conference in Berlin. But since you're going to speak at Gamification Europe, and we're the official, the first media sponsors of the conference, and we are interviewing some of the speakers like yourself. Some of them have already been interviewed, but we would like to know what your talk will be about. What could get us excited about your talk, and why should we go and listen to Samantha?
So because it will be very mysterious. And so the talk itself is actually on my other obsession, which is mystery boxes. And they're kind of a little bit in the same vein of escape rooms, except these are mailed experiences, so they just turn up out of the blue, which I like. I like the idea of just surprising someone. And we've been doing a lot of research about this idea of curiosity and how much that is such a powerful engagement factor. And using the idea of the mystery boxes. So we've done a piece of research at the university with some of our students. We managed to surprise and shock a few of our poor unsuspecting students, which was great. And what we found is that this method works, and I will be talking all about why it works and the power of perceptual curiosity in that talk.
Wow, that sounds very, very exciting, very useful for our daily almost practice of anybody in the educational sector. So engagers, as you know, there's this conference is going to be in November, late November, 26th and 27th. It's going to be in Amsterdam, so we are very, very welcome to come. In fact, we even have a special link for the engagers. If you go to professorgame.com/Gamification Europe, you will get a special discount just for the engagers, and there you will be able to see speakers like Samantha and others that we've already interviewed or that are coming up as well. So Samantha, there's a final question that we make to most of our guests that I would like to make to you, because this is a question that comes from our audience that you don't know which question that is, and I didn't know beforehand either.
Eep.
This question, sorry?
Eep.
But I think that the question that just came up, because all this conversation is stalling a bit so that I can come up with a question, and it comes with the random numbers. But I think that this one actually makes a lot of sense for what we've been talking about and for your background as well. And it's a very simple, straightforward question, but I'm not sure it's very, very easy to answer. But I'm sure you'll have a very good stab at it. And the question is, how can we move gamification forward in education?
Okay, so I think, so definitely this is one of the areas which I am trying to move forward in now myself. And I think that we need to look past what we traditionally view as sort of games and, serious games, gamification, and look at other areas for inspiration. So I'm talking about looking to theatre, to books, to films, to also help us build really great experiences, and that we don't need to kind of fixate ourselves so much on the mechanic side of things. We kind of forget that. I've been really bad at this in the past, in that I've thought, mechanics are really, really important. We need to really focus on that. And actually what I find myself moving more into the space of is trying to connect with people on an emotional level. So, when we talk about engagement, I think sometimes we forget about the ideas behind humor, maybe curiosity, and, these kind of underlying, do we want to make people feel sad? Do we want them to feel like, that challenged me. I don't know how I feel about this sort of stuff anymore. Or, I think we need to really focus a lot more on the emotional side of what we're doing, and then build games to to help build those emotions around them. So I think that at least for me is where I see my journey going with, games and gamification in education, and sort of how I'm going to try and develop from there. But yeah.
I really love your answer, and I love the question, because it's when you say how can we move gamification forward in education, we're talking about, in the end, how to move education forward as well, because I'm a firm believer that gamification will continue to move education forward and to modernize in many ways, and to think about things that traditionally we didn't think about. And I love that of your answer, that it's connecting with our learners, with our players in a deeper level, in the emotional level, before actually designing what are the mechanics. And I really enjoyed that answer. So thank you very much for that, Samantha. I'm sure the engagers will get a lot of inspiration from that.
Good.
Samantha, finally, is there any final piece of advice that you would like to leave the engagers with? Then let us know how can we know more of you, how can we connect with you, and then we'll say it's game over.
So just try everything. I mean, and also, again, and this is because I've been doing it for a while now, but don't take yourself so seriously. And I know a few other people have said, don't be afraid to fail. But I guess that is it, is that don't worry what other people are going to think of whatever you've done. Just try it, because, just play. I guess that's what I would say.
Definitely, and very, very in tune to what we've been talking about. Samantha, is there a preferred method of connection with Samantha, so that we can connect with you, look at what you're talking about, and see more of what you're doing? I don't know, over some social media, some webpage?
So I'm on Twitter, which I'm quite active on, so I can always respond to that, which is at credit_continue. Or I also have a blog, which I also respond to, and an email. So that's, you can get hold of me anywhere, really.
Fantastic. That's beautiful. So engagers, there you got it. You can contact Samantha through that way as well. Remember that she will be in Gamification Europe talking about these exciting mystery boxes. And hopefully we will get to meet Samantha and you over there in Amsterdam in late November. But until then, it's time now to say it's game over.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks to you, Samantha. Engagers, it's fantastic to have you here. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Samantha. Are you using Instagram? I'm finally posting regularly and would love to connect with you there. Just like on Twitter, my username is RobAlvarezB. And before you go into your next mission, would you like to know what we can learn from Disney to apply into our gamification practice, especially in education and learning? Then subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there!